of this video, which actually has to do with a defamation lawsuit that TD Jakes filed back
I
in
thought TD Jakes
2024.
was a churchman gang. It's
Nope.
TD Jakes. You ain't never heard of TD Jakes?
Nope.
You
I
look
don't know
just
who that
like him.
is. I don't know who that is,
You
man.
look just like that man, boy. TD Jakes, look at that. TD Jakes, JD Jakes, JD Jakes, Thomas Dexter Jakes. This is Daddy. Where the fuck is he at? Oh, is this? Oh, that's him. Oh, that's what TD stand for. My stupid ass. Nah, he do look like JD though. I ain't gonna lie. What the fuck? Nah, he a churchman though. He a churchman though. Like, why his name coming up in the Diddy case, girl? But no, it's crazy because Cat Williams said his name though. You seen Cat Williams and Shannon Sharp video, didn't you?
Yeah.
You know he said TD Jason P Diddy, bro. You know, then TD Jason ended up coming
Watch
out.
as Cat Williams
He had a stroke or something.
calls out Bishop TD Jakes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
watches TD
Remember
Jakes
that
and
shit?
Geno Jennings' response.
I came in this business saying I was going to expose. When I talked about Michael Jackson, when I talked about R. Kelly, they canceled me for these things because why would you talk about another black dude? Race is not where the line is drawn. It's God's side and the other side. And we don't care nothing about the other side. Period. All of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. TG Jakes, any of them. All lies will be exposed. That's all. And anyone who takes that the wrong way, know why they take it the wrong way.
Good, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm good because I know the truth.
TD Jakes, do not speak against homosexuality.
Watch as Cat Williams calls
That shit all come 360, gang.
Pressure in October of 2024, this man, whose name is Dwayne Youngblood, did some interviews in which he said that when he was around 18 or 19 years old, TD Jakes assaulted him. In response to these interviews, TD Jakes sued the man for defamation. And then the man's attorney, who is Tyrone Blackburn, responds to TD Jakes' lawsuit, saying that the lawsuit should be dismissed because it's insufficient and everything that Youngblood said in the interview is considered free speech. So Jakes' attorney and Youngblood have some back and forth with their filings, and now the judge who is overseeing this case has stepped in and responded to Tyrone Blackburn's motion to dismiss, and ooh child, what a time. So in the judge's response to Blackburn's motion to dismiss, he writes, quote, "While reviewing Blackburn's briefs, the court became aware of the fact that they contained wholly fabricated quotations from case law, including fabricated quotations from the court's own prior opinion. In addition to these non-existent quotations, the briefs repeatedly misrepresented case law. In layman's terms, according to this judge, Blackburn completely made up quotes from the judge himself, as well as made up quotes from other cases. And then when he did include actual quotes from real cases, he completely twisted their words and what they meant." The judge goes on to say that TD Jakes' attorney filed a response to Blackburn's motion, highlighting that what he was saying was not accurate, but Blackburn just responded by submitting another document with even more lies. So this judge says, quote, "In other words, when accused of a serious ethical violation, attorney Blackburn chose to double down. This is very troubling. The court views Blackburn's conduct as a clear ethical violation of the highest order." Oh, and then the side note is that yesterday he filed a notice to withdraw in this case, meaning he's asking to no longer represent Youngblood in this lawsuit. But this judge basically says, not so fast. As an attorney, you have legal and ethical duties, including candor to the court, which means you're not supposed to lie to a judge. The judge does acknowledge that attorneys can make creative case comparisons and may even stretch existing case law to support their arguments. But what they can't do, according to this judge, is fabricate non-existent quotations from either case law or what a judge has said or ordered. Later, the judge says that he presumes or assumes that Blackburn used generative artificial intelligence, also known as AI, instead of writing the motion himself. However, according to the judge, it doesn't even matter, because regardless of if a document is prepared by a paralegal, a secretary, or even AI, the minute an attorney signs and files it, they are now responsible for everything that's in it. The judge includes that he believes that Blackburn was intentionally trying to deceive and mislead him by submitting these documents. And so the judge makes a couple of rulings. Number one, he says that he has
Zito
stricken
can hop on
Blackburn's
fucking
motion to
Roblox
dismiss
too.
from the
That ain't
record
funny as
and
fuck,
is now
too.
telling Blackburn that he has until July 11, 2025 to submit a new response to the lawsuit. And it bet not have no lies in it. The judge has also ordered for Blackburn to submit a written response as to why he should not be sanctioned for the lies he included in his motion, and he has until July 18th to do so. And then finally, the judge has ordered a show cause hearing, meaning Tyrone Blackburn has to also come in person and explain to the judge why he shouldn't be sanctioned for these lies. And that's supposed to take place on July 24th, with Tyrone Blackburn's attendance being required. The judge ends his letter saying that Tyrone Blackburn trying to withdraw from this case does not protect him from facing the consequences of his actions, and then he says he will decide if Tyrone can actually withdraw after they have the show cause hearing. So listen, I'm not a lawyer, and I may not know too much, but a little bit of advice. If you're looking for a lawyer, you might not want to start with him, okay? I'm not a lawyer, but if you've been trying to figure out how or if the prosecution has actually proven their case against Diddy, well, they use their closing argument to try and pull it all together. So let me walk you through how the government says they've proven beyond a reasonable doubt that Diddy is guilty as charged. Before y'all yell at me, this video is all about the government's closing. Come back for part 2 where I'll break down the defense side.
Man, look at this
Okay?
freaky.
Now, before I dive in, I want to know that
Man.
the purpose of a closing argument
Look
is
at
to
him, man.
summarize your
Bro.
case and try to convince the jury one last
Ain't
time
got no
that the
choice,
evidence
cuz.
and testimony
Whatever he
that's
want.
presented
Sharp ass
supports
box.
the
Box
side.
sharp as fuck. He
The point of
look
this is to
guilty as
persuade the
fuck.
jury
Whatever he
one
said
last
he
time.
did, he
And
did
so for the
100%,
government's closing,
cuz.
they have this theme that Diddy doesn't take no for an answer. They say
Bro, quit playing, cuz. Bro, he wouldn't take no for an answer, bro. It's crazy work, cuz. Like, what do you mean by that, gang?
Hey, man.
What do you mean by that, gang?
What?
Hey, to my son and Diddy. Knock on that motherfucking door. They say, who is it? Oh, shit. Hey, that boy ain't playing no fucking games with niggas, gang. What the fuck? What the fuck? Bro, Diddy say he ain't taking no for an answer. It's crazy work, gang. That's funny as
this
fuck.
because
but
Diddy
fucked up, bro.
doesn't accept no, and his enterprise, which was made up of his staff and inner circle, existed to make sure that he never had to. They say that members of this enterprise's job was to fulfill Diddy's
This bitch
every
a long
desire,
video, though. I'm
boost
finna
his
lock
power,
in.
and to protect his image. Now, a little bit of context, I want to tell you that all
Well,
crimes
physical
are made up
being
of
back.
elements.
Hell yeah.
Follow me. So if a prosecutor in California says that you have committed a robbery, they would have to prove the elements of robbery. So they would have to show that you took someone else's property. That's element number 1. They would have to show that you took that property from that person's immediate presence, meaning they were holding this property or the property was right next to them. They would also have to show that you took this property using force or fear. And then finally, they would have to show that you took this person's property and had no intention of giving it back. So those 4 things are the pieces or the elements that together make up the crime of robbery, at least in California. So applying that to this case, the government uses their closing argument to walk through every charge that Diddy is facing and all of the legal elements that are required to prove each of those charges. And then the government explains how they say they've proven each of those elements and why the jurors should be able to vote guilty. Did all of that make sense? I hope so. So starting with count 1, which is the RICO conspiracy charge, the government first explains that this charge is really about punishing people who commit crimes as a part of a group, because they say groups are naturally more powerful and more dangerous than individual people. And so according to the government, Diddy was already a powerful person, but with the support from his inner circle and this enterprise, he was made to be even more dangerous and more powerful. And from there, the government breaks down the elements that are necessary to prove the RICO conspiracy charge. The first element, they have to show that at least 2 people agreed to be a part of this enterprise. Number 2, they have to show that the enterprise affected interstate or foreign commerce. And all this really means is that they have to show that someone or something crossed state lines. The third element is that they have to show that the defendant, meaning Diddy, knowingly became a member of this enterprise. And then element number 4 is that they have to show that the defendant knowingly agreed that he or members of this enterprise would commit at least 2 racketeering acts in a 10-year period. And racketeering acts are just crimes.
Hey, let me smooth
The
headphones,
government says
boy.
they have proven element number 1, which is that 2 people agreed to participate in the enterprise. According to the government, Diddy is almost always person number 1, and then depending on the day or the crime, person number 2 could be anyone from KK, D-Rock, Fahim, Bonds, or any of the assistants. The government says anytime an assistant was asked to buy narcotics and they actually bought those narcotics, that was them agreeing to commit a crime and be a part of this enterprise. They also say when D-Rock saw Suge Knight at Mel's Drive-In and then rushed home to tell Diddy, and then they all grabbed weapons and drove back to the Mel's Drive-In, the government says that at that moment, D-Rock was agreeing to participate in the enterprise. And then in regards to KK, they say she was agreeing to participate in the enterprise anytime she instructed people on what to do for Diddy. And the government points out that the law doesn't require that any of these people enjoyed what they were doing or wanted to do what they were doing. The law only requires that these people actually participated in the activities, and that alone proves they joined in the agreement. Okay, moving on to element number 2 for the RICO conspiracy, and that again is affecting interstate commerce. And to this, the government says anytime they were able to show flight receipts or hotel reservations or text messages of Cassie or Jane or others being flown to a different state, or when they showed evidence that narcotics were being moved across state lines, the government says that all of this meets this particular element. And then element number 3, which is Diddy willingly becoming a member of the enterprise, the government says that this element was met because the only reason this enterprise existed is because of Diddy. They say he created it, he led it, and even when assistants or security guards or other members of the enterprise were in and out, the person at the center remained to be Diddy. And then the 4th element required to prove a RICO conspiracy is that the government has to show that Diddy and or members of this enterprise committed at least 2 racketeering activities. Now, before I dive into this element, I need to make a correction to a video I made a couple days ago. In that video, I said that the government removed arson and kidnapping from the racketeering activities, but they actually didn't. What they removed was attempted arson and attempted kidnapping, but they kept actual arson and actual kidnapping. So what this all means is that the jury no longer needs to decide if Diddy and his enterprise attempted to commit arson or attempted to commit kidnapping. They only now have to decide if Diddy and his enterprise actually committed arson and actually committed kidnapping. Hopefully that makes sense. And so in regards to this 4th element, which is the government proving Diddy and his enterprise committed 2 racketeering activities, the government says they have proven Diddy and his enterprise committed a number of racketeering activities. For example, they say when Jane testified that she picked up packages full of narcotics and flew them to Diddy on 2 occasions, and then the government also showed text messages of KK telling Jane where exactly to pick up those packages. The government says that all of this could satisfy the 2 racketeering activities that Diddy and his enterprise committed. And so they say if the jurors only believe that these 2 instances happened, that Jane flew these packages to Diddy twice, that could be enough to satisfy this 4th element. But they don't stop there. They also say that when Diddy's former assistant, Brendan Paul, testified that Diddy once made him try some narcotics to see if they were good, this also could satisfy one of the 2 racketeering acts necessary for element number 4. They say that that was an instance of narcotic distribution, and that distribution does not require the involvement of buying and selling narcotics, and it doesn't even have to involve a large amount of narcotics. As long as narcotics are delivered or passed or handed over to someone else, that alone is distribution. And again, the government doesn't stop there. They say they have proven other types of racketeering activities that Diddy and his enterprise committed. And they include the instance in which Cassie said she had been beaten up by Diddy in a car, and because her injuries were so bad, he hid her away in a hotel until she was all healed up. Well, according to the government, this instance qualifies as kidnapping because Cassie didn't want to go to the hotel, but he made her, and then he had security monitoring her to make sure she didn't leave. And to support this story, the government highlights that Diddy's former assistant, David James, testified on the stand about this incident, saying that he remembers bringing Cassie food to that hotel, and he found it odd that when he knocked, Diddy's security guards answered the door. The other kidnapping instances, they say,
That boy gone. That boy might as well get his hide in the kite. Tell his family throw some paper on his books. That boy is hitting the road, Jack. It's over with for that boy. I ain't gonna lie.
Of Capricorn Clark being kidnapped in New York as well as LA. And the government says if jurors believe any two of these instances, even if it's one of the narcotic distribution stories and then one of these kidnapping stories, those two together could satisfy this fourth element. And then they go on to arson, which they say is another form of racketeering activities that Diddy and his enterprise participated in. And according to the government, the only question is whether the defendant or his co-conspirators were responsible for the arson. And they say, of course, the defendant was behind this. The government argues that Diddy didn't light the match himself because he also doesn't even buy his own suit. But they say he directed the arson, and that's evident because he told Cassie that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car and that he would have it done when he was out of the country. And then next they talk about the bribery allegation, and of course that has to do with the Intercontinental Hotel incident. And according to the government, offering a bribe to someone who witnessed or knows facts related to a crime with the purpose of influencing that person's testimony or the information they may give is considered bribery. So they say that Diddy's exchange of money for this tape was him trying to buy silence, which is a form of influencing testimony. They note that Diddy tried to give the first security guard a stack of cash when he came up to the hotel room, but that security guard declined it. And then they say when he later gave Eddie $100,000 and made him sign an NDA, that again was him trying to buy silence. And they say the reason Diddy didn't want this tape to get out was more than just bad publicity. They say it's because Diddy knew what he did and what was on that tape was a crime. According to the government, Diddy didn't want police to catch wind of what happened, and that's why he told Eddie Garcia not to make any big purchases with the $100,000, because they say he didn't want to draw any attention and have the police take notice. They also say the reason Diddy texted Cassie after the incident that the cops were there and that he was getting arrested is because he knew that what he did was a crime and that it was realistic to assume that the police could get involved. And so again, they say that was his motive for the bribery. All right, so that's the wrap up on the RICO conspiracy, on the elements required to prove RICO conspiracy, and how the government says that they've proven each of the elements. And from there, they start talking about trafficking. So to prove trafficking, the government has to show that, number one, Diddy recruited, enticed, transported, harbored, and maintained the women involved. That he, too, knew or didn't care that force, threats of force, fraud, or coercion, or any combination of those things, were used to get these women to engage in these acts. Now, in regards to element number one, the government says Diddy persuading Jane and Cassie to have FOs and hotel nights qualifies as him recruiting and enticing them, and then him paying for the hotel rooms qualifies as him harboring and maintaining the women, and then him paying for them to be flown to different cities qualifies as him transporting them. So according to them, element number one is satisfied. Moving on to element number two, the government stresses trafficking doesn't require that the women involved actually say no. According to them, if Diddy used threats, violence, narcotics, or coercion to get the women to say yes, that's trafficking. The government also points out that they are not saying every FO and every hotel night was trafficking. According to them, the jury only has to believe that in at least one instance of a hotel night or an FO, that Diddy used force, threats, fraud, or coercion to get the women to engage in the acts, and that alone would be enough for a conviction on this charge. And specifically in terms of coercion, the government says that Diddy's decision to pay Jane's rent was a way for him to coerce her. And just so we're on the same page, in layman's terms, coercion is basically getting someone to agree to do something because they are afraid of what will happen if they don't agree. It's the illusion of giving someone an option when the truth is they don't really feel like they have an option. And so to illustrate this point, the government references a time where Jane expressed she wasn't excited about having a hotel night, and then in response to that, Diddy tells her, quote, "Well, get over it, please. Look at the roof over your head and that pretty smile." And then in another example that the government references, they show a text where Jane tells Diddy, quote, "You're not having your way, so you immediately threaten me with rent. I'm tired of the rent threats. I hate living like this. I hate living in fear." Which again, the government says shows that Diddy would threaten Jane about her rent in an effort to get her to agree to do what he wanted. And from there, the government points out the specific instances in which they say Jane and Cassie were trafficked by Diddy. Starting with Jane, they say that Diddy trafficked her through fraud during her September 2023 trip to New York. And in this instance, the government says while Diddy was texting Jane, promising her dinner and a shopping trip and no hotel nights, he was also texting an escort named Paul to set up a hotel night. They go on to say that once Diddy realized Paul wasn't available, he then began texting the owner of the escort site that they used, and it wasn't until Jane was mid-air on her flight that he revealed to her that he had a surprise, and that surprise was a hotel night. And again, prosecutors remind the jurors that if they believe this New York story and this story alone, that would be enough for them to convict him of trafficking Jane. And then the next instance they give is of the sobriety party from October of 2023. And they say that this was trafficking because it was after Jane texted Diddy, quote, "I don't want to be mistreated. I'm not an animal. I need a break." And then Diddy responded to her saying that the two of them should spend the day together without any strangers. But after Jane was still resistant to hanging out with him, Diddy started texting her that he was going to come over to their house and repeatedly asking her if she was going to let him in their house. The government says that Jane continued to be resistant and not wanting to hang out with him, and so then Diddy tried a new tactic, which was to tell her that he was sick. And shortly after this message, Jane replies to him. Within a day of these messages, the sobriety party was being planned, and all of this together, according to the government, was done by coercion. And then the final instance is from Jane's house in June of 2024, but I'm not going to go into that story because we all know what happened. Okay, so turning to Cassie and the instances in which the government says that Diddy trafficked Cassie, the first one they highlight is of the Intercontinental Hotel incident, which I won't go over. And then the second one is from an FO that happened in Cassie's apartment in 2013. And then the third instance is from an FO that happened after the Cannes Film Festival in 2012.
No, take a crackhead or no a crackhead.
2013 incident, the government says that an escort named Daniel was being used for an FO, and in between sessions, while Cassie was laying on the floor, Diddy told her to come to the bedroom, but Cassie said she needed a minute. Daniel, the entertainer, testified on the stand that before Cassie got up to go to the bedroom, Diddy threw a bottle towards her. It hit the wall, and then he dragged her by her hair into the bedroom. Daniel testified that he didn't see what took place in the bedroom, but he heard what sounded like slapping, and when that was all over, Diddy and Cassie came out of the bedroom, and Diddy asked if the two of them were ready to continue. And so, according to the government, this is an example of Diddy trafficking Cassie. All right, on to the final charges that Diddy is facing, and that is for transportation to engage in play for pay. And this charge doesn't require force, fraud, or coercion. The elements are just that Diddy knowingly transported the women, and he doesn't have to physically transport them. Arranging their transportation also works for this. And then the second element is that Diddy intended for the women to engage in play for pay. And the government says that they've proven this through the testimony from the entertainers, where they said that they were paid, as well as the text messages and different records where they show that payments had been made. Okay, so I didn't hit everything, but I think I hit the big ones, and hopefully all right, now I'm not a lawyer, but if you've been trying, technically, yes, they've proven it, but you still don't think he should be found guilty, or maybe you think no, they still haven't proven it. Either way, let me know what you think, and then come. All right, now I'm not a lawyer, but let me tell you about the defense's closing argument and why they say Diddy is not guilty of RICO, trafficking, or
we finna know why Diddy ain't guilty though. The defense closing argument. Hold on real quick. Why Diddy ain't? Why Diddy ain't motherfucking? Is Diddy guilty?
Is he guilty?
Is Diddy?
You know what?
guilty?
You just remind me. I need to get that
Is Diddy guilty?
Gravity Falls sound.
Well,
on my soundboard.
Is Diddy guilty? Huh?
Get guilty as shit.
That boy ain't guilty.
any of the other charges in this case. If you watch my part 1 video, you know I already walked through the government's claims and how they say they've proven that Diddy is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. But before we get into the defense's side, I want to remind you that closing arguments are where each side takes all the witness testimony and the evidence and tries to persuade the jury one last time to see it their way. And while what the attorneys say is not evidence, meaning it's not supposed to be taken as fact, it does provide a bit of a roadmap of how they want the jurors to think about the evidence. And so, just like the government had a theme for their closing, which was Diddy doesn't take no for an answer, the defense also has a theme for their closing.
I think V got work,
and
though.
that is the tale of two trials. Agnifilo, who is Diddy's lead defense attorney and the one who does the closing argument, says that trial number 1 is the one that relies on evidence. It's what the witnesses actually said on the stand, what was actually written in text messages, and what was actually going on in the videos. Trial number 2, on the other hand, Agnifilo says is the one prosecutors want you to believe. He says it's what they say happened and not what actually happened. And as an example, he says that while the evidence shows that Diddy had narcotics for personal use and engaged in a swingers lifestyle, the government says that this is all a RICO. Early in the closing, Agnifilo talks about the success Diddy has had in his life and notes that 6 out of his 7 children, along with his mother, are on the second row in the courtroom. He also says that Diddy is a giving person who takes care of people, and that's why Jane has a beautiful house for her and her child. And he specifically says, quote, Jane came up here and testified against him. I don't know what she's doing today. I hope she's having a nice day, but you know where she's doing it, in a house that he's paying for. And I hope they're having a nice Friday. And from there, Agnifilo calls out the government for what he says was overkill in regards to the raid on Diddy's house. He reminds the jury that Diddy's home was raided with hundreds of agents, full tactical teams, and after all that they did, according to him, all they found were boxes and boxes and boxes of Astroglide, baby oil, and some narcotics for personal use. Agnifilo says, well, maybe all of this was worth it because at least the streets of America are now safe from Astroglide. According to Agnifilo, this case isn't about racketeering or trafficking at all. He says it's about love, jealousy, infidelity, money, and domestic violence. And he starts with that last one, domestic violence, reminding the jury of a post that Cassie made on her Instagram shortly after the Intercontinental Hotel video
violence. So
went
they
public.
pushing for domestic violence. All this shit that happened, they pushing for domestic violence, gang.
What if he get off though, cuz? For domestic violence, cuz? Just a DV, cuz.
But that's gonna be a hell of a lawyer, boy. They gonna pay that nigga $1 trillion.
Cassie says, quote, thank you for your love and support. Domestic violence is the issue. And so he notes that she could have said anything she wanted to in that post. She could have said that trafficking is the issue, that coercion is the issue, or even that running away from an FO is the issue. But he emphasizing that Cassie chose to say that domestic violence is the issue, and that's because, according to him, that's what this case is really about. Agnifilo tells jurors to believe Cassie. Believe what she said in that post. He then goes through the history of Cassie and Diddy's relationship, highlighting that she was actually in a relationship when she met Diddy, and she lied to the boyfriend she had at that time, who was 10 years older than her, so that she could go spend a weekend with Diddy in Miami. And after that weekend, Diddy and Cassie's relationship began. It was really intense and full of really high highs and really low lows. And according to Agnifilo, the real winner of this 11-year relationship between Cassie and Diddy is Cassie, because she's the one currently sitting on $30 million while Diddy is sitting in jail. And then Agnifilo starts talking about how much Cassie and Diddy loved each other. He says that they loved hard and they loved out loud, but that's also why he says jealousy came in. He notes that Cassie was jealous of Gina and upset that Diddy wouldn't stop seeing her, and then she was also jealous of Kim, particularly at her funeral when Diddy said she was his soulmate. Agnifilo says that was the last straw for Cassie, and she did what she always could have done, which was to leave. And next, Agnifilo brings up Kid Cudi. He reminds the jury that while on the stand, Kid Cudi himself said that Cassie played him and Diddy. And so while the government wants you to believe that Cassie was scared to death of Diddy, scared of his temper and what he might do, Agnifilo points out that didn't stop her from lying to him about a years-long relationship that she was having with another artist right under his nose. Agnifilo says, quote, she's not afraid of him because you know why? She can handle it. And there was nothing in the evidence that showed she was planning to tell either of them about the other. He goes on to say, Cassie was keeping it gangster. What? Cassie was like, I'm going to pull this off. I'm going to lie to him and I'm going to lie to him. and I'm getting a burner phone to help keep the lie going. And then from there, he moves on to count 1, which was the racketeering conspiracy charge and the predicate acts that fall under it. And as a reminder, the charge itself is racketeering conspiracy, but the predicate acts, or the racketeering activities, are part of the elements required to prove this charge. And so Agnifilo starts with the Capricorn Clark kidnappings that's listed as predicate acts. He first notes, quote, "There's something a little off-kilter about Capricorn. I think she's fundamentally a good person, but she's a little out there." Not him shading her. He goes on to say that she called her relationship with Diddy super platonic, which according to him really means I wanted more, but we were friends. According to him, when Capricorn Clark told Diddy in 2021 that she had a crush on him and that the two of them misused their dope chemistry, it was because she was hoping she would have been in his life longer. So Agnifilo says when she went back to work for Diddy, even after the alleged kidnappings, it was because she really wanted him in her life, and that's what she meant when she said, "I wanted my life back." Next, Agnifilo addresses the warehouse lie detector story, and as a reminder, Capricorn Clark testified that she was brought to a warehouse over the course of multiple days to be given a lie detector test about some stolen jewelry. But Agnifilo says if she was going home every night, does that mean she was re-kidnapped every day? So if she went home Monday night, was she re-kidnapped on Tuesday, and then went home Tuesday night and re-kidnapped on Wednesday? According to Agnifilo, that's not kidnapping. That's her wanting to pass a test and prove that she didn't steal the jewelry. And then next he moves on to the December 2011 kidnapping incident, and this is the one where Capricorn Clark says Diddy showed up at her house at 5:30 a.m. with a weapon and forced her to go to Kid Cudi's house with him. But Agnifilo, with his shady self, says she'd probably been waiting for Diddy to come over at 5:30 a.m. for years. If he asked her to take a trip to the moon, she'd go. She's so honored that he came over, he does not need a weapon. And then he goes on to say that it wouldn't have made sense for Diddy to come over to Capricorn Clark's house to get Kid Cudi's address, which is what she said on the stand, because Kid Cudi himself testified that Cassie is the one who gave his address to Diddy, and he knows that because Cassie told him that she was worried Diddy might go to his house because she gave him the address. And in addition to this, Agnifilo says that if Diddy came to Capricorn Clark's house at 5:30 and then the two of them plus security made it to Kid Cudi's house by 6:15, which is when she says she made the call to Cassie to warn her about what was happening, why then did the officer not get the call about the incident until 8:20? According to the defense attorney, the more logical explanation for this is that if Diddy really came over, he and Capricorn hung out at her house for about 2 hours, and then she willingly went with him to Kid Cudi's house. But because she didn't want to look disloyal to Cassie, she added the weapon part in to make it look like force. But even on this note, Agnifilo asserts that it doesn't make sense that Diddy would have been carrying a weapon at all that day because he's the fighting type. He says, quote, "At the risk of sounding sexist, they were going to do what men do. They were going to have a good old-fashioned fist fight, which is why you know he didn't do anything with that man's car, because that's not his style. He, meaning Diddy, is a fighter. You have a problem with him, I'm coming to your house. You're messing with my girl, I'm coming to your house, and we are going to fight. No weapons. We're going to fight. One of us is going to punch the other in the nose and get punched in the nose, and we're going to have a good old-fashioned John Wayne, 8 o'clock in the morning, Hollywood Hills fight. That's who Diddy is. He went there to fight." And this leads to the next allegation, which is arson. Agnifilo says that blowing up a man's car is cowardly and not Diddy style, and there's no physical evidence tying him to this crime. The only evidence prosecutors were able to present is an email that Cassie sent to her mom and Capricorn Clark saying that Diddy told her that he would blow up Kid Cudi's car, but there is no actual text or email from Diddy saying that himself. Next, Agnifilo addresses the Cassie kidnapping allegation. And he says this one also is a little weird because on the stand, Cassie said she wanted to stay at Diddy's house, not the hotel. And so according to Agnifilo, it's not kidnapping if the person wants to go to the house of the kidnapper. He says that hotel stay was done to avoid bad press, which is also the reason he says the alleged bribery was for. According to him, because everyone on Diddy's staff was aware that hotel staff leaks things, Diddy and his team were concerned that that could happen regarding this Intercontinental Hotel video. He highlights that the police weren't even called, so there was no reason to be worried about them. Specifically, he says, quote, "They were not worried about the police. I mean, it's a horrible video. It's a misdemeanor. They were worried about terrible publicity. Not they was worried about TMZ more than they were worried about the cops. Well, actually." Agnifilo admits that Diddy was foolish for texting Cassie that the police were there and they were arresting him, but he says that it was for no other reason than to get her attention. And then in regards to the NDA that the hotel security officer signed, the attorney says it had a clause in there that allowed for sharing information with the police as long as Diddy's team got a heads up. And according to the attorney, this heads up was only necessary so that they could make a request to the court to not make certain things public. Which again, he says, goes to the point that this was about bad PR, not about the police. And then we get into the witness tampering allegation involving Mia. And as a reminder, this allegation stems from D-Rock trying to get Mia to speak to Diddy after the criminal investigation started, and eventually offering her some money, which Mia testified she believed was coming from Diddy. So according to the government, D-Rock was trying to bribe and tamper with Mia on Diddy's behalf. But Agnifilo points out a text message where Mia told D-Rock that she needed some money. In the text, she says, quote, "I do charitable stuff here, like helping out local families grow small businesses, building their little houses, whatever they need that I can do physically because I'm out of Skrillo money." And then D-Rock responds, "I'm so proud of you. You're my sister for real. If you need anything, I can help. I'm not rich, but I'm not broke either. I love you. Let's talk tomorrow." Up next, Agnifilo attacks the government's allegation of narcotic distribution. He admits that, yes, Diddy had an addiction, but buying and using rugs for personal use isn't distribution. And when the assistants were helping him get the rugs, it was not a part of some criminal enterprise. Agnifilo gives an example of when Diddy's former assistant, David James, was on the stand, and he testified about getting one of Diddy's guests an 8-ball of cocaine while they were in Saint-Tropez. On the stand, James said not only did this request not come through Diddy, but he actually took steps to try and keep Diddy from finding out about it. And so Agnifilo's point here is that if rug distribution was really a part of this criminal enterprise, wouldn't David James be happy to tell Diddy about what he did? Wouldn't he be saying, "I'm doing the stuff that our criminal enterprise is supposed to be doing"? The attorney says the fact that James did the opposite shows that this wasn't a criminal enterprise where members have joined in with the understanding and the agreement that they would participate in rug distribution. Next up, the attorney hits on the trafficking charges, and he questions how Diddy or anyone is supposed to know when a hotel night crossed into the line of trafficking. The attorney asks, was freak-off number 76 trafficking, but freak-offs 1 through 75 were not? And he goes on to say, if you base it on text messages that Cassie sent, you would never know when it crossed the line into trafficking because she always seemed to express interest in it. The attorney even claims that the Intercontinental Hotel incident wasn't about an FO at all. He says it was about a phone. To support this idea, he plays portions of the video and claims that you can see Cassie holding something when she first walks out. And then he plays another portion of the video where he says Diddy now has an item in his hand, which the attorney suggests is his phone. So Agnifilo claims that when Diddy ran out of the room, he wasn't chasing Cassie to force her back to have an FO. He was actually just trying to get his phone back. Next up, the attorney moves on to Jane and asserts that hotel nights were really just their version of date nights. He says that there would be nice hotel rooms, Bryson Tiller or sometimes Usher would be playing, and there was lighting, and sometimes before the hotel night started,
they making it make sense, but who knows?
The problem, according to the attorney, is that Jane wanted more. She wanted the stuff that she could post on Instagram. He says, quote, "Listen, you guys know who her baby father is. But do they? And you guys know when she was in Vegas, you know who she was with. Do they know that too?" So while Diddy was special to her in a lot of ways, he also was what she was used to and how she's used to moving in life. So she's used to having and being given nice things, and according to the attorney, that's what motivated her. And so Agnifilo says that in the moment, Jane was agreeing to everything she did. It's only now that she regrets it and is trying to say that it was coercion. The attorney highlights that wishing you didn't do something isn't the same as being forced to do something in the moment. He also makes a random comment that Jane must have had the world's worst lawyer to have gotten the crappy chop.
Real spill though, that's the other side of it though. Like, motherfuckers didn't want to fucking do that shit, but they did it, and that's the point.
Yeah.
That's why they gonna fucking see it how they gonna see. They can word it how they gonna word it because they did it. The fact that they did it is the point, and it's like they saying what it is. You feel me? Now it's like they saying like, you feel me? Like if you know you fucking with a motherfucker because they got some money. They basically letting it be known type shit. Like, you know you was only fucking with me because I am who I am. Like, let's be real. And that's how they pitching everything that they pitching. Like, he that nigga, and everybody was doing what they was doing because he is who he is, bro. They was starstruck as fuck, bro. They want more so of no organizational shit. Like, y'all wanted to fuck me, bro. Like, you feel me? Like, y'all want to do all this shit. Like, that's what it was, cuz. And that's how they pitching it. Even though it's fucked up, but yeah, cuz. That shit, bro. This shit ain't, I feel like, bro, this shit ain't have to be no fucking case, cuz. It's all jealousy shit. Exactly what they said it is, cuz they just jealousy shit, bro.
I feel like it's that, and it's the fact that motherfuckers feel like they ain't get enough money out of them.
Yeah, bro, they probably like, shit, bro. She getting tight, he making more money, this and third, ends ain't me.
And then another thing was going around too, because when all this shit first started, C-Mo was telling me that Diddy was doing something with his liquor brand, cause you know he owned what's his name, right?
Yeah, he was trying to turn this shit up.
Yeah, you feel me?
Yeah, I heard that shit too.
The one people ain't like that, you feel me?
Barbados or whatever, yeah, they was like, yeah, I'm gonna do that shit, boy.
Bro.
Yeah, I heard about that shit too, though.
Support payment she gets, but the person who is picking up the slack and paying for the house that she and her child lives in is Diddy. That man is full of shade. And then next, Agnifilo begins to address the incident that happened at Jane's house in June of 2024. According to him, for the first time in their relationship and for no reason at all, Jane got violent with Diddy. She slammed his head into the counter, threw candles at him, and called him a very offensive name. He also notes that when she testified, she said that she was running through her house as Diddy was following her and knocking down all the doors to the rooms that she entered. And when she went into her closet, she said she changed out of the date night dress that she had on into another dress so that she could run. But the attorney says, we all know she's an active person. She said this on cross-examination. Why, if she has the opportunity to change out of the dress, would she put on another dress instead of sweats?
Just coming out my motherfucking earth.
According to the attorney, the timeline of this night doesn't really add up, and so based on his review of the evidence, he suggests that after Diddy and Jane got into it and she ran away from her house and hid for a while, she was gone for way shorter than 2 hours. She stayed gone for a little while, but she made it back to the house by 8:30, and after that, her and Diddy spent hours talking and trying to work through what happened. He says around 7 hours later, so around 5 o'clock in the morning, is when the entertainer was actually called over. And he also adds in there that it's not a coincidence that the entertainer that was called to come over is the same entertainer that
What you eating for a chicken salad? You eating a chicken salad for?
There's something she didn't say about Vegas that she would need to know to make more sense out of what happened on June 18th and June 19th. Because it doesn't make sense that happens to be the same person that she saw in Vegas and that Combs didn't know about. And so the overall conclusion Agnifilo suggests to jurors is that Jane's unprovoked violence that night was a calculated decision by her to have something in her back pocket in case she ever needed to sue Diddy or have something to hang over his head. And from there, the attorney hits on the transportation to engage in pay-for-play charge. According to him, none of the entertainers were paid for intimacy. They were paid for their time. And he points out that the two entertainers that were called to testify never called themselves
I wasn't paying y'all to fuck. I was just paying y'all because y'all was here. You feel me? Like, that mean y'all, you feel me? Like, come on now, bro. They snapping though.
And with that, Agnifilo begins to wrap up his closing, leaving jurors with a few final notes. He says KK was not a co-conspirator. She was just the single most helpful person anyone has ever met. He also says that Cassie asked entertainers to urinate on her, that this case is really about domestic violence and Diddy's personal life. And then finally, he says that this case was started because the government decided to pursue it. He says that Cassie, nor Jane, or any of the other witnesses ever went to the police to report a crime. The Fed saw Cassie's lawsuit and began investigating it because of who Diddy is. And so he asked the jury to acquit Diddy on all charges and return him to his family who have been waiting for him. And with that, the defense's closing argument ends. But the government gets a chance to do a rebuttal. So let me give you a high-level overview. All right, now with that, the defense's closing argument ends. But the government gets a chance to do a rebuttal. So let me give you a high-level overview of what they said. And just so you know, the rebuttal was handled by Attorney Comey. So I'll use her name because I know how to pronounce it. So number one, in regards to transportation to engage in pay-for-play, Comey basically says, it's ridiculous to believe that Diddy flew entertainers across the country, watched them be intimate with his girlfriends while he pleasured himself, then handed them wads of cash, and it was all just a coincidence. She says common sense alone tells you that Diddy flew them out and paid them for their acts. She also called him a master baiting celebrity, and that's hilarious. Comey then references text messages.
A masked masturbating celebrity. A masked masturbating celebrity. What the fuck?
Is that Diddy sent to a rep for Cowboys for Angels as further proof that he paid to engage in pay for play. In this specific message, the representative from Cowboys for Angels tells Diddy he owes $600 for one of the entertainers, but Diddy replies, quote, he couldn't even perform. He's lucky he got anything. And so Comey says if he wasn't paying for intimacy, then why would he bring up the man's performance after an inquiry about payment? Next, Comey addresses the idea that no one agreed to commit racketeering activities with Diddy.
See, that's you know.
And according to her, KK and D-Rock as participants is enough for this claim. She says even when those two didn't like what was happening, they still helped. For example, she highlights that they were both friendly to Cassie after the Intercontinental Hotel incident, but they also immediately sprung into action, helping to orchestrate the bribe with the hotel security officer. And so she says that's an example of the two of them playing both sides. And then she slightly detours and addresses Agnifalo's assertion that Diddy isn't a coward, so he fights men without weapons. And to this, Comey says, quote, Mr. Agnifalo said that Sean Combs is a hands and fist guy, something like that. And sure, with his girlfriends, but with men like Suge Knight, he gets weapons. So it makes sense that when he was going to see about Kid Cudi, he brought a weapon. When he's beating up a woman who's half his size, he doesn't need a weapon. But when he's going after a man who can actually match him physically, he's going to bring a weapon. So it makes total sense that he brought a weapon that day. Comey goes on to say that Diddy doesn't even plug in his own phone charger. So of course he didn't commit crimes alone. He, according to her, used his staff and inner circle to keep rugs on hand for him and his girlfriends. He used them to kidnap Capricorn Clark. He used them to fly entertainers across the country. And he also used them to keep thousands of dollars on hand to pay entertainers. She said Diddy delegated and his inner circle handled the dirty work. She also addresses the narcotic distribution argument again and says that according to the law, giving rugs to someone alone qualifies as distribution. Next, she addresses the idea that the women participated in these activities because they enjoyed them, as if it's comparable to them having a preference for lemonade. And she says that these women participated in these activities, at times having been bruised and beaten, covered in oil and awake for days, walking around in 8-inch heels with UTIs that wouldn't heal, and pelvic soreness from sitting in the same position for hours. She says that's not a preference, it's abuse. And the assertion that it's anything other than that, quote, is ridiculous on its face, end quote. I can't tell if it's just the way I'm reading this transcript or if this woman was really in there going off. Don't it seem like she was going off? And then lastly, Comey addresses the idea that Cassie, Jane, and Mia are all lying. Number one, she highlights that because Diddy paid Cassie $20 million less than 24 hours after she sued him, by the time she came to the trial to testify, she already had her money from him. She also says that before Cassie testified, she had already reached the settlement with the Intercontinental Hotel. So that means she already had her money from Diddy. She was already settled with the hotel, reading out explicit messages that she sent years ago, talking through details of some of the most intimate, humiliating, and traumatic events of her life, and she's already been paid and doesn't get additional money. Comey says the only reason Cassie testified in this trial is because it's the right thing to do. It wasn't for some payday because she's already been paid. And in regards to Jane being a liar and doing this for money, Comey says Jane has never sued Diddy, and if anything, it would be in her best interest to keep him free since he's paying her rent and for her attorney. And in addition to this, Jane's text messages telling Diddy that she felt tricked and coerced by him and that she wanted to stop doing hotel nights all started before Cassie's lawsuit came out. And so since Jane doesn't get additional money for testifying, hasn't sued Diddy, and doesn't really stand to benefit with Diddy going to jail, it doesn't make sense that money is her motivation. Comey also says the fact that these women tried to find joy in their lives despite what they were going through doesn't mean they were lying about the abuse. She says there's a lot of people in the world who carry around pain and loss, but they don't let it define them. They find the strength to hang out with friends, to go on trips, and to post on social media. She also goes back to the comment that Cassie is the winner in all of this, and she says, what exactly did Cassie win? Black eyes, gashes in her head, rug and intimacy binges that lasted for days while she had a UTI and got urinated on in the mouth? And so Comey ends her rebuttal going back to the Intercontinental Hotel incident and the incident at Jane's house in 2024. She says that when violence is paired with unwanted play for pay, it turns into trafficking. And according to her, there's no way the Intercontinental Hotel incident was about Diddy's phone, because security guard Flores that testified said that Cassie is the one who kept asking for her phone back that day. And in regards to the June incident at Jane's house, Comey says that there is no suspicious reason as to why Antoine, the entertainer Jane saw in Vegas, was called over that night. It's because by the time this happened, the lawsuit from Cassie had already come out, the raids on Diddy's homes had already happened, and he had stopped using Cowboys for Angels because he knew he was being investigated. And so his only options were entertainers they had used before. But Cabral, who lived in Atlanta, had already tried to extort Jane, and Antoine, who they called, lived in LA. But even after all of that, Comey says the only thing that matters from that night is that after being violent to Jane, Diddy allegedly stood inches away from her, handed her a pill, and told her to go back out there and suck. And so Comey tells jurors that Diddy has gotten away with his crimes for 20 years, and so now it's time to hold him accountable. Ooh, child, I'm tired. And so that's it. Deliberations begin on Monday. If you enjoyed this video, you better like and subscribe and tell everybody, because I spend so much time doing this. Also, all right, now I'm not a lawyer with that. I'm not a lawyer, but jury deliberations in the Diddy trial have just started and there's already an issue. So the juror sends a note to the judge saying that one of the jurors, juror number 25, they don't believe will be able to follow the judge's instructions. So the attorneys took some time and they each came up with proposals back to the judge as to what he should tell the jurors. Ultimately, the judge sided with the prosecution and told the jurors, "I received your note. I remind every juror of their duty to deliberate and their obligation to follow my instruction on the law. With that instruction in mind, please continue deliberating." Also worth noting, juror number 25, the one they're saying can't follow instructions, is a 51-year-old gay white man with a PhD in molecular biology who's studied veterinary science. So who knows what this means, but we'll see what happens. I'm not a lawyer, but the note about juror number 25 could possibly mean, not for sure, but could possibly indicate that he already has his mind made up and doesn't want to engage in deliberations or debating about what his opinion is and what everybody else's opinion is. It could mean that he doesn't want to deliberate. That would be why he's not, quote, following the judge's instructions. So that's what it could indicate. If that were to be the case, that could result in a hung jury. Hung jury means that the jurors deliberating can't come to a unanimous decision. It means they all can't decide if Diddy is guilty or not guilty. If that were to be the case, okay, don't misconstrue my words. If the jurors are not able to come to an agreement on if Diddy is guilty or not, it would be called a hung jury, and hung juries result in mistrials. It means that this trial is incomplete because we didn't get a verdict, and then the prosecutors get to decide if they want to do it again or not. That could happen. That could be what this leads to. It also could not. It's the very first day and first couple hours of deliberations. You can expect deliberations to last longer than a day. And so we're still very, very early, but I got a lot of questions in the comments, so I wanted to make this video, even though I'm not a lawyer. So please don't go stoning me and telling me all the things I said wrong. This is all potential, could be the case, could also not be the case. Okay. I'm not a lawyer, but the jurors in the Diddy trial sent 2 more notes for the judge today. I'm not a lawyer, but the jurors in the Diddy trial sent 2 more notes for the judge today. First note was them telling him that they wanted to leave at 5 p.m. And then the second note had to do with distribution. Specifically, they're asking if a person asks another person for some narcotics and that person gives the requester the narcotics, is that considered distribution? If you ask for narcotics and you are given narcotics, is the person who gave them to you distributing narcotics? And just for the sake of an example, Follow me. When Jane was on the stand, she testified that she once did a hotel night sober, but eventually asked Diddy for some narcotics because she said doing it sober was too real for her. So when he gave her those narcotics, is that still considered distribution? That's just an example. I'm not saying that's what the jurors are referring to, but for the sake of context, that's a real life example of what they're asking about. So the judge decided to let them go at 5, since that's what they requested, and then told the jurors that when they come back tomorrow at 9 a.m., he will give them an answer to their second question about distribution. And I'll just add that per the jury charge and the instructions the judge gave to the jurors regarding the elements required for distribution, the first element is that the person actually distributed a controlled substance or possessed a controlled substance with the intent to distribute it. Number 2, that the person distributing the substance did so knowingly and intentionally. And number 3, that the substance was actually a controlled substance. So it doesn't say anything about who asked who. So we'll see what the judge says tomorrow. I'm not a lawyer, but it was day 2 of jury deliberations for the Diddy trial, and we got an answer to yesterday's question. As a reminder, before jurors left yesterday, they asked the judge if a person is given an illegal substance after asking for that illegal substance, is that considered distribution? And today the judge replied saying, in response to the jury's question, the court refers the jury to page 37, lines 1 through 3 of its jury charge. And then he quotes what that says, which is, the word distribution means actual, constructive, or attempted transfer. To distribute simply means to deliver, to pass over, or to hand over something to another person, or to cause it to be delivered, passed on, or handed over to another. Distribution does not require a sale. So if you were in my comments saying that distribution requires a sale, based on the legal definition, it doesn't. But then they asked another question. So I'll be back with the video for that. I'm not a lawyer, but it was day 2 of I'm not a lawyer, but shortly after the judge responded to the distribution question that he got from jurors in the Diddy trial, he got another note. And this note was a request for the transcripts of when Cassie testified about the Intercontinental Hotel incident, her testimony about the cans incident, and then her testimony regarding the FO she had with Daniel Phillips at the Essex Hotel. And then they also requested the transcripts of Daniel Phillips' testimony himself. Can I give you a little bit of context here? If you recall, in closing arguments, prosecutors outlined 3 specific incidents in which they said that Diddy trafficked Cassie. Those incidents were the Intercontinental Hotel incident, cans, as well as the Essex Hotel incident, in which Daniel testified that during a break between the FO session, Diddy told Cassie to come here, and when she didn't come immediately, he dragged her by her hair into the room, closed the door, and all Daniel could hear from the outside was some slapping noises. He said that after the door was opened, Diddy came out and said, "Are y'all ready for another round?" So those are the transcripts they were requesting, but the attorneys had some back and forth about what is all included in that testimony. For example, the defense wants to include the Instagram post Cassie made after CNN released the video for the Intercontinental Hotel incident. If you recall, she made an Instagram post that said, "Domestic violence is the issue." Prosecutors, on the other hand, said that post is not included in the testimony regarding the incident, and so they want it left out. Ultimately, the judge rules that the Instagram post can be included, and so he says that testimony, as well as the testimony for the other requests, should be sent to the jurors by 1 p.m. These jurors are stressing me out already. I want to talk to them so bad. Are y'all arguing? And what is juror number 25 saying? What's happening? I'm not a lawyer, but shortly after the judge, I'm not a lawyer, but child, there's a verdict in the Diddy trial. Kinda. So, jurors in the Diddy trial sent a note to the judge that said, quote, "We have reached a verdict on counts 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are unable to reach a verdict on count 1 as we have jurors with unpersuadable opinions on both sides." And as a reminder, count 1 is the RICO conspiracy charge, so that's the one they can't decide on. Count 2 is for trafficking Cassie. Count 3 is for transportation to engage in institution for Cassie. Count 4 is for trafficking Jane. And then count 5 is for transportation to engage in institution for Jane. So they have reached a verdict on 2 through 5, but have not reached a verdict on count 1. And just for context as to what we're dealing with, count 1 has a maximum sentence of life in prison. Count 2 and 4, the trafficking charges, have a minimum sentence of 15 years and a maximum of life in prison. Counts 3 and 5, the transportation charges, carry a maximum sentence of 10 years. So after the note is read, both the defense and prosecutors want the jurors to keep deliberating. They're not ready to just go with this hung on count one. And so what typically happens when a jury tells a judge for the first time that they are stuck on a charge, the judge typically says, keep deliberating. There's also the option of what's called in some states the Allen charge, and that contains very specific wording, and it basically tells jurors to reevaluate their opinions and their thoughts and see if everyone can collaboratively come up with a verdict. So the judge in this case decides he's not ready to read the Allen charge yet, so he instead tells the jury, quote, I received your note that you have reached verdicts on counts 2 through 5, but not on count 1. I ask at this time that you keep deliberating. So no Allen charge, he just tells them to keep trying. Now, because you're wondering, yes, if they remain deadlocked on count 1, they can still have a verdict for counts 2 through 5. It can be a partially hung jury. That can happen. We aren't there yet, obviously, since they are told to keep deliberating, but it can happen. Since this note came so late in the day, the jurors went back to the jury room, but then they sent another note saying they were ready to go home. So they're gone now. This is moving faster than I thought. I'm not a lawyer, but child, there's a verdict in the Diddy trial. I'm not a lawyer, but
So,
Tight, boy. They said that Diddy fucking got what's coming up. That he got sentence.
that's what I seen.
Yeah, I definitely just seen that shit, but it might have just been like that shit that niggas just seen for real, for real. Diddy Coles. 55. Oh man. Diddy Coles. Diddy Donkey Kong. Combs.
Mm.
Damn, cuz. Now, what we on though? I'll play some shit. Niggas trying to play. Damn, how long this shit take? Okay.
Shit, I don't know what you trying to play. When I hop on that zone,
Or Crow out. Yeah, no. I don't want to play that shit.
I don't know what crow at.